In Colombia, President Gustavo Petro signed a decree declaring a formal ceasefire with the National Liberation Army. In Trinidad and Tobago, Dominica's Prime Minister and incoming CARICOM President Roosevelt Skerrit announced that the community will allow the free movement of all citizens by early 2024. In Austria, the 8th International Seminar of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries continues on its second and final day, with calls to defend price stability. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, signed on Wednesday a decree declaring a formal ceasefire with the guerrilla group National Liberation Army, ELN, between August 3, 2023 and January 29, 2024. The decree states that the so-called bilateral and temporary national ceasefire may be extended after the peace talks table has assessed the reports of the monitoring and verification mechanisms in accordance with what was agreed by the parties. On the other hand, it stipulates that as of midnight on July 6, 2023, military operations and offensive police operations against members of the ELN who participate in the peace process shall be suspended. The ceasefire agreement between the government of Colombia and the guerrilla group was agreed at the beginning of last month in Havana during the third cycle of the peace talks. In Colombia, at least 6 people were injured after the explosion of an unknown device in the vicinity of the police station in the municipality of Bucaramanga. According to authorities, the injured are police officers who were at the site of the explosion. Officials detailed that in addition to the injured, several vehicles were affected. Local authorities rejected the action, calling it a presumed terrorist attack, which adds to those that have occurred in several cities in the country in the last few days.
We have immediately deployed all our police forces, intelligence, criminal investigation, specialties, and police modalities in coordination with other authorities in order to locate, prosecute, and bring before the competent authority the persons who have committed this act. We are also carrying out all our investigation, patrolling and control measures in the metropolitan area of Bucaramanga.
At least 27 people were killed on Wednesday after a passenger bus plummeted into a ravine in the Mexican state of Oaxaca. According to the state prosecutor's office, 17 others were injured in the crash and taken to different hospitals of the region for treatment. The government entity said in an investigation has been launched into the cause of the accident, with early indications suggesting mechanical failure. According to the Civil Protection Agency, at least 6 of the injured were unconscious and in serious conditions when they were rushed to the hospital. Authorities informed that the bus had left Mexico City on Tuesday night and was heading for the town of Santiago de Yosondua. Deadly road accidents are common in Mexico, usually due to high speeds, poor vehicle conditions, or driver fatigue. In Uruguay, the Chamber of Senators, after a voting process, approved the law to create the Water Emergency Fund, which aims to face the hydrological crisis the country is going through. Following the initiative taken by the Minister of Economy and Finance, Azucena Arbeleche, these plans will be a tool through which at least $12 million a month will be made available, which will ensure the supply of the vital liquid to more than 500,000 people in vulnerable situations. Also, as a contingency for the situation, more than 90,000 senior citizens, retirees, and pensioners will receive money each month to guarantee access to 2 liters of water per day. Finally, after a meeting of senators' representatives, they agreed to evaluate and accelerate the processes for the construction of the dam at the Casupa stream, and thus consider measures to address the critical context faced by the affected departments. And Uruguay's water crisis is intensifying. Freshwater reserves are running low, and more than half of the country is not receiving drinking water through the pipes. Our colleague Mateo Grille with the details.
The severe drought affecting Uruguay is leaving images that some time ago were hard to imagine. where once there were huge freshwater reservoirs, now there are only cracks in the earth, the remains of trees and sediments. The water reserves in Paso Severino, where the dam that supplies drinking water to the country's two most populated cities, Canelones and the capital Montevideo, is located, are reaching 1%, and the fresh water will run out within hours.
We came with the family to really see how it was because we didn't believe it. One sees it on TV and says, no, it can't be. We came to see it and make sure that it is true, what we're going through, what is coming. And sometimes we waste too much water and see the situation of this place to what it has reached. From the level it had before, and now today we have almost nothing. It will be difficult for the people.
The metropolitan area of the country has been without drinking water for weeks, and within hours will only be able to use the water for sanitary purposes. The agony has been dragging on for days, and the rains are not coming. Under normal conditions, the water from this place used to supply almost the entire south of the country without problems. According to experts, rainfall levels have been well below normal for the past 3 years.
It has been 38 months of rainfall negative index. In some places it hasn't rained, and in some other places it has rained well below normal. When I say far below normal, it means that out of the 1,400 millimeters that it should rain in Uruguay, in many cases not even 200 millimeters were registered in each region.
The current drought is the worst of the last 100 years, and the consequences are plain to see. Many people look back on their memories and cannot believe what they see today.
This is below the level of what the river was without the reservoir. That is, imagine if you see the old bridge there when there was no reservoir, it means that the river would be at least 2 meters below. And today, the bridge is practically dry. It is far below that level, below what the river was without the reservoir. In other words, today there is no reservoir.
It is terrible, terrible, and it is pitiful. I did not know this place, and from what he says, it justifies everything he said about it being an ecological disaster, or I do not know what to call it. Let's hope that it rains a lot, and that the water accumulates and returns to normal, because it is really pitiful. It is pitiful.
This is the old bridge of Paso Severino. It has been submerged for 40 years under an enormous flow of water that ran through this area, which is a branch of the Santa Lucia River. The effects of climate change are becoming more and more noticeable and are hitting Uruguay hard.
Mateo Grille, TeleSUR, Uruguay.
And with the search for solutions to regional problems, the 45th edition of the Summit of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community came to a close in Trinidad and Tobago. During the 3-day meeting, the community affirmed that it intends to work together with partner countries and address short, medium, and long-term priorities. In addition, national leaders say they seek to make efforts to address some of the region's most pressing challenges, including energy and food security. Officials also call for global financing for the countries most vulnerable to the consequences of climate change. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Thursday, the 8th seminar of the Organization of Oil Exporting Countries continues in Austria on its second day, with calls to defend oil market stability. The participants of this convention have agreed on the need to reduce production as a measure to maintain market stability. As part of and energy industry to mitigate the effects of climate change. During his inaugural speech, the Secretary General of OPEC, Haitham Al-Ghais, called for an energy transition and said that sustainability means balancing the needs of current and future generations. We now welcome our special envoy, Jorge Gustavo from Vienna, with the latest on the second day of the OPEC International Seminar.
We did have the opportunity this morning to interview the General Secretary of the OPEC. We're talking Haitham Al-Ghais. He was very clear in terms of the challenges that are ahead in terms of the energy industry worldwide and in the next decades. And the challenge is to conciliate the energies actually in place with renewable energy that are being developed at high speed. But the issue is that, for example, that for the year 2045 is going to be a 23% increase in the demand of energy, and only the clean energies are not able to fulfill that commitment. And therefore, they have to work together, oil and gas and the regular energies, and I would say fuel fossil energies, with the clean energies in order to satisfy that demand. And also, another challenge that they have is false or fake or confusing information that is running around the world in terms of that there is an instability. They're trying to sell the idea that there is an instability of the markets, and instability create retraction or recession, and retraction of consume means less production means the prices going down of oil, and that creates instability on the market. So mostly one of the issues here about the oil producer countries that are here at the OPEC summit is precisely send a clear message. There's not such thing as instability, quite the contrary. There's enough oil, there's enough fundamentals of the economy worldwide to keep things safe and to keep things stable. So basically, those are the two issues that are coming very strong in that 8th International Seminar of OPEC here in Vienna. It's going to go on because it's going to, by the end of the day, by the end of the afternoon, it's going to be clear that there's a lot of energy demand that is necessary, and that therefore there's a lot of energy coming from fossil fuels. Not only if they were saying falsely that in 40 years it's going to finish. That's not true, and therefore they're sending a message of calm in order to stabilize the world market. Get back to you now.
Thank you, Jorge, for this report. We now continue with our news. Japanese protesters gathered in Tokyo on Wednesday to demonstrate against the government's plan to dump nuclear-contaminated wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. The protest took place in front of a plant that they allege generates massive amounts of water contaminated with radioactive substances as it cools nuclear fuel in reactor buildings. Meanwhile, according to local media, the legalization of the dumping of these wastes into the sea will begin to be carried out in August. The mobilization expressed its disapproval and condemned the use of the report of the International Atomic Energy Agency to validate the discharge into the ocean. The Director General of the UN Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, said on Tuesday that the release of treated water stored at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant is a national decision of the government of Japan. In the meantime, the International Atomic Energy Agency reiterated the safety of Japan's plan to dump treated radioactive water into the sea from the disaster-affected Fukushima nuclear power plant. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi told Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida that the Asian country's plan to dump the treated water into the Pacific Ocean is consistent with international safety standards and would have negligible radiological impact on people and the environment. During the meeting with the Japanese leader, the IAEA Director General called his review dedicated, scientific, and impartial. Kishida, on the other hand, said Japan will respond sincerely to the IAEA's review and will continue to explain its plan to affected local residents and the international community with a high level of transparency.
For the past 5 hours or so, I have been visiting different places, different locations, and I was also able to look closer to the facilities that are in preparation in case there is a decision to start with the controlled discharges, and I was satisfied with what I saw. It also applies internationally. As you know, I will be going to Korea in a few days. I will be going to the Pacific Islands in a few days because I am going to explain what the IAEA, not Japan, what the IAEA is doing to ensure that there is no problem and that the environment is not getting any negative impact. The IAEA will continue permanently to review how this is done, corroborating what also the Japanese own national regulator is going to be checking. So hopefully, if everything goes well, we will have a pretty tight network to provide the necessary confidence in the region, in Japan and outside Japan, that things are not going to affect the environment.
TeleSUR English launched its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. Now we're going to take a short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Israel, hundreds of demonstrators took to the streets of the capital Tel Aviv to protest against the dismissal of local police chief Ami Eshed. The Tel Aviv police commander declared that he was leaving the force, citing political pressure from executive officials to use excessive force against anti-government protesters. In response, citizens shut down several of the capital's main roads, rejecting the government's repressive intentions. The incident occurred in the midst of the internal crisis derived from the controversial judicial reform proposed by the ultra-right government of Benjamin Netanyahu. Kenya is postponing the reopening of its border with Somalia after recent attacks on the soil attributed to radical Al-Shabaab rebels. Interior Minister Kithure Kindiki announced that the phased reopening of the border post of Mandera, Lamu and Garissa could not take place as announced in May. The decision comes after the death of 5 civilians and 8 police officers in separate incidents near the border last month, blamed on the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group. The border was officially closed in October 2011 due to attacks by Al-Shabaab, who have been waging an insurgency against the federal government in Mogadishu for more than 15 years. The two countries had announced in July 2022 their intention to reopen the border during talks between Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his Somali counterpart Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, but this never materialized. In South Sudan, President Salva Kiir pledged that elections previously postponed and now scheduled for December 2024 will go ahead as planned and that he would run for president. Kiir is the only president South Sudan has known since he led the country to independence from Sudan in 2011. The world's youngest country has since gone from crisis to crisis, held together only by a fragile government of national unity. Nearly 400,000 people perished during a 5-year civil war until President Kiir and Vice President Riek Machar signed a peace agreement in 2018. South Sudan is one of the world's poorest countries despite significant oil reserves. No other candidate has just declared his candidacy, but according to observers, the current Vice President surely will. The head of the UN Refugees Agency, Filippo Grandi, urges Sudan's neighbors to keep their borders open despite security worries as the number of people fleeing the conflict tops 500,000. Grandi warns that the 2-month-old war threatens to spread insecurity to the fragile nations bordering Sudan.
Many of these neighboring countries are very fragile, and there is also an element of insecurity that risks spreading as a result of this situation. My appeal to all the neighboring countries is to say, I understand your security concerns, but please keep your borders open, because these people are really fleeing for their lives. Sudan has gone through a lot of instability, but there has never been a war in Khartoum. So these are people who had never experienced conflict, for whom the fact that their flat has been devastated, looted, often bombed, has been a traumatic experience, a terrible shock. And you can see it, you can sense it in what they say. All this has to stop, because it could have immeasurable consequences in the region and beyond.
The high UN official also urged the international community, especially the rich countries, to do a bit more in humanitarian aid to deal with the refugee crisis.
If you look at what the international community, the rich countries, spend on their military, I'm not saying that military spending isn't necessary. That is not my field, and I understand the logic. But humanitarian aid is a tiny, tiny fraction of all that. I can't believe we can't make a bit more of an effort, and not just from traditional donors. We need more humanitarian resources from the Gulf states, for example, who are already doing a lot, but I think they can do more. Everyone needs to make an effort.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news briefing, and you can find these and many other stories on our website, TeleSUREnglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.